ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय Ramakrishna Te Namaha. Namaskar to all of you. Welcome to the study of Ramakrishna, the Great Master, written by Shardanandaji Maharaj. In the last discussion, there was the mention of Sri Ramakrishna about the essence of Vedanta. When Turiyanandaji Maharaj, his pre-monastic name was Hari. So he was into deep study and practice of Vedanta, especially the non-dual Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, which is very, very tough. So from his childhood, he was practicing intense continence. At the age of 10, 12, he was into the practice of Vedanta, and now at the age of something like 13, 14, he was intensely practicing Vedanta. One day, when he came to Sri Ramakrishna, as soon as Sri Ramakrishna saw him, he said to Hari, or the would-be Swami Turiyananda, well, I hear you are now given much to the discussion of the Vedanta. That's very good. But does it teach anything more than this? Brahman is real. The world is unreal. Brahman is real. The world is unreal. So that means the Lord alone is the substance, reality in this world. All else you see now in the form of different colorful, attractive things, they are illusory. The whole avidya or ignorance, nescience, maya, is making the same God look like all these sense objects. So God himself appears apparently as this world, but in reality, the essence of this world, the reality of this world is God alone. So God is true. God alone is true. All else is illusory, untrue. So what is the moral we have to take? We have to go intensely to realize God. Who is God? Our own true nature. He not only exists in the external world, but he also exists within us. He is the eternal subject who is witnessing all these phenomena. He is the noumenon. So he is experiencing this phenomenon. So he is the eternal witness. The subject, eternal subject, always the subject, never the object. So that's why go get back to him. Realize your true nature. Then this world cannot put you into trouble. Any difficulty, any problem will never trouble you. So even now we can make use of this statement whenever you are in trouble, whenever you are in some quarrel, in some adverse situation, whenever you get insulted, whenever you get into any kind of trouble. We can repeat this essence of Vedanta told by Sri Ramakrishna. What is that? God alone is true. All else is untrue. And Ramakrishna used to make that simple. He had got that essence by Divine Mother. As a small child, he went to Divine Mother, and asked her, Mother, I have not studied Vedanta. I do not know much of Sanskrit. I want to know the Vedanta, but I don't want to go through all the details and get into the unnecessary things. I want the essence, I want the crux of Vedanta. Can you give me the substance, the Sara, the essence of Vedanta? That's why Divine Mother is called Sarada. or Sharada or Sarada, Saraswati means the giver of essence. Sara means essence. So this world, the giver of essence in this world is Sarada, Sharada. So Divine Mother Saraswati gets the name Sarada because she gives the essence. Now the Divine Mother here is giving the essence of Vedanta, taking the position of Sarada, the Sara, essence. And now what was that? God alone is true. All else is untrue. Brahma Satya Jagan Mithya. And Ramakrishna, after getting that knowledge, he went so deep into it. I'll take up that matter afterwards while taking up much more deeper discussion on this matter. But before that, I just want to tell you, Sri Ramakrishna got that essence from Divine Mother, and after that, he made it simple so that the common man should understand. Because the term Vedantic terms like Parabrahma, Brahma, Satya, Jagan, Mithya, all those things are so terse and tough. So he made it very simple so that the common man will understand. And he used to tell in Bengali language, Ishwar hi vastu, Ishwar hi shob, or shob avastu, Ishwar hi vastu, or shob avastu. The Lord, the Lord God is alone the reality. All else is immaterial. That is the only substance, that is the only material. God alone is the material. Substance. All else is illusory. All else is not substance, immaterial. So now, based on this, Shardanandaji Maharaj will take up some more things so that we can understand it better. The whole of Vedanta deals about it. How do we practice Vedantic meditation? So now Shardanandaji Maharaj is taking in a simple manner. That's what the great avatars, the present avatars like Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, the great Acharya, the present day Yuga Acharya, they have all come. Shardanandaji Maharaj, another great Acharya, they have come to show this very, very tough Vedanta. The people have made it much more complicated by so many discussions and threadbare uh, things, discussions on that. So they have made it simple. So let us see how Shardanandaji Maharaj is simplifying it. Sri Ramakrishna, according to Shardanandaji Maharaj, used to tell, hearing, thinking, and meditating. Hearing, thinking, and meditating. So Sri Ramakrishna used to tell these words, hearing on the Lord, thinking on that, meditating, reflecting. So after you hear something from the Guru, from the scriptures, from great people, you hear many good things in the world. After that, what we do is we forget it. So in India, the term used for that forgetting or neglecting or ignoring is hear it from this ear and give it out through the other ear. So that usage is there in India, meaning you hear it and then forget. You don't put it into practice or use it. You forget it. So you get and forget. So that is called get it through one ear and leave it out through the other ears. So that usage is in India, the phrase is in India. So now hearing, Ramakrishna used to tell hearing. What is the term for hearing in Vedanta? Shravana. Shravana means hearing. So very carefully, with faith, with great interest, you have to hear it from the Guru, the instructions from the Guru. You have to protect it, take it into your heart, take it into your memory. Then after the hearing, you have to go to a place of solitude or where there is no uh, disturbances. Then cogitate, reflect, just like the chewing of the cud. The cow will go about outside, then it goes on, grazes the grass, and so many, it eats so many other things which it gets very quickly. So it has one big stomach as a storage. So it goes on storing it because God alone knows when you can get good food. It goes on storing it in one of the stomach pouch. Then after that, it comes back to the shed, then sits there. You can see it is taking out from that big pouch. then chewing it, nicely chews. Then it sends to the other digestive system where it will be digested. So that you can see when the cow is sitting in the shed, it will be like this, making its mouth. You can see the mouth rolling like this. So it will be taking out that food and it will be what do you call mm, digest chewing it. So that's called chewing the cud. So the usage in English, chewing the cud, meaning that it is taking that food which has when it goes out here and there, all that is taken, it takes only the essence of that or the food and digest it, and then it assimilates to its system, it gets strength, it gets nourishment from that food. So what we have to do is, after hearing the great teachings, the great things of the Vedanta, the reality of God, whatever you have learned through any scriptures, your own scriptures, you have read so many different books like Bhagavad Gita, or you may be reading some other things of your own religion. Then what have you to do? You may belong to some particular group in Hinduism or outside Hinduism. You may be hearing so many good things from your teachers, from your parents, all that thing. You have heard so many, it is in your memory. Take it out, reflect on it, think on it, reflection, inquiry. Then make it, you get the conviction of it, then assimilate it. So, without doubt, all that you have heard, you have to make it your own. You have to do the inquiry, then take it inside. Then, after that, the next process after the reflection, Shravana, that is Manana. Manana is reflection, making the inquiry, getting the knowledge without doubt, with clarity. Then finally, it is Nididhyasana. Then you have to meditate on that, think on that. Then you have to completely get immersed in that thought. So these are the three processes in Vedanta, that is called Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, Vedantic meditation. So Shravana is hearing, gathering all the beautiful things from all the different quarters, then reflecting on it, taking only the essence of it. So many things will be collected. Don't take all, only the essence has to be taken. Reflect on that, make it firm, get conviction. Then, after the manana, it is digestion or assimilation. Then you become strong, getting the nourishment of that, you become strong. So that is nididhyasana. The knowledge becomes firm, it becomes steady, the wisdom becomes steady, then you become pragna. So the next process is sthita pragna, realizing that. So Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Sri Ramakrishna used to tell that Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, hearing, thinking, and meditating. First, hearing. You at first hear that Brahman is real. The universe, that is Brahman here means God. As I told you, Brahma or Brahman in Sanskrit is the biggest. Bhuma. No thing is bigger than that. That is the biggest. Infinity, formless, attributeless, infinite existence, absolute, infinite consciousness, knowledge, absolute, infinite bliss, absolute. So that is Parabrahma, God in its trueness, essence, formless reality, attributeless God. So that is called Parabrahma. So God is the only reality. So you have to take that essence of that. All else is illusory. This world is illusory. Universe is unreal. You have heard it. Then reflect on it. Go on reflecting. So that is Vedanta Vichara, discrimination. What is real and what is unreal in this world? We have heard about what is real. God alone is real. All else is unreal. So go on discriminating. All the things you get, you put through this lens. This is unreal. This is real. This is real. This is unreal. So in that way, you take it inside. See that. Filter everything through that knowledge you have got. So God alone is real. All else is unreal. Then universe is unreal. Then thinking by reason and discrimination, you get that idea deeply and correctly imprinted in your mind. That is manana. Shravana is hearing, then manana. Then you get that idea deeply and corrected, imprinted in your mind. After that, be immersed in that thought, that you have that conviction of the thought, the idea is clear. So be immersed. Meditation. Then meditation, you apply your mind to the Lord. You meditate on the Lord, you apply your mind to the Lord, the real entity, by renouncing the universe, giving up all that is untrue, the unreal entity. So this is what Sri Ramakrishna explains about the essence of first getting the essence of Vedanta, then reflecting on it, Shravana, Manana, then meditating on it, that is Nididhyasana. This is the method by which the Vedanta is doing the spiritual practice. So this is the way by which, so Ramakrishna has made it so simple. So it is simplest, no simpler explanation can be given of this practice of Vedanta. So then Sri Ramakrishna tells of what avail will it be if one hears and understands this, but does not try to give up what is unreal. What is the use? Of what avail will it be if one hears such wonderful teaching, understands this, but does not try to give up what is unreal? We hear so many things, other things, then cry. We take that seriously, then get into troubles, worry over that. We get stressed up, we get anxiety, we get depression. We go on crying and crying and crying, suffer for that. Oh, somebody called me this, somebody called by, sweared at me. So somebody were quarreling yesterday and day before yesterday. So I got disturbed. So when you get this knowledge, when God alone is real, so will that fighting, will that scolding, will that anger, will that disturbance hurting your ego? Because ego is unreal. Then that is the way to discriminate. They have hurt my ego, that's all. So what have they scolded? Somebody scolds you, insults you. It's only your ego, your individuality. So that is not the real entity. Your real entity is Atma Swarupa, the Lord within you. So they have just mentioned about that bundle of character. I'm not that bundle of character. So why should I worry? Why should I think and cry for the unreal? Let me concentrate on my mind on the real. Let me cry for the real. Cry to realize that real. I have not realized that reality in my life. So why don't I secure and concentrate my energies on that? For the otherwise, I'm wasting. I'm frittering all my energies on these unnecessary things, petty things, mundane things. So let me concentrate. So in this way, when you discriminate, when you start thinking what is real and unreal, then getting that knowledge, firm knowledge, then you will enjoy everything. It will be like a sport. You will be a witness of everything happening. You are a witness. You don't entangle into it. You don't be a part of it. You will be there in all the happenings, but you are not touched. How is that? It is just like the lotus, that flower and lotus leaf. That's why I see in India and Hinduism, why do they take this lotus so much? Why it is used as the insignia of a bhakti, devotion. So what is the essence of bhakti, devotion? So the lotus flower is taken because it stays in the water. It stays in the muddy water, slushy water, but it never drenches, it never touches. It is not tainted by water. Though it is staying in the muddy water, all the bad waters, everything is there in that water, all sorts of dirt and slush and mud. But though it is staying in that muddy water, in the water, it never touches the dirt and mud to its body. It stays in between in the muddy water, but never touched by that. So you put a drop of water on the leaf of the lotus, it will become like a pearl. It gets separated. It doesn't stick to. It has such a special surface. It doesn't stick to the leaf. It becomes like a pearl. And if you push it, it will fall down like this all the time. Never does it take sticks water. So that is a speciality. Like that, be in the world, be amongst everything, but don't stick to that. Don't get attached to anything. So that is the way, that is the manana, that is the way you have to do the vichara, the discrimination, inquiry, reflection. So then you are separated, you get that conviction, then you will enjoy everything. So just like that lotus. So that has been explained in Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna. Ragadvesha viyuktaistu vishayan indriyaischaran atmavashyir vidheyatma prasadam adhigacchati. Even though the man of steady wisdom is moving amongst, in between all the different types of attractive things, sensual things, so many bad things are there in this world. He is present in the world, he is in the marketplace, but ragadvesha viyuktaistu. There is no attachment and aversion. Ragam is attachment, dvesham is hatred, aversion. So no likes and dislikes. It doesn't get attached to those things. So without that raga dvesha viyukta is to vishayan indriyaischaran, he'll be moving about in the midst of the whole, all these sensual things. But in spite of that, his mind will not get attached to that or into trouble. Why? Because Atma was Shaihi, his mind is in the Lord. Videya Atma, the mind is obedient to him, he's the controller. So it doesn't run out here and there and get attached and to get into trouble. So, like that, you have to discriminate, you have to know the difference between the real and unreal, go on reflecting, inquiring. What is this? What is that? Should I need it? Should I take it? Should I be worried about this? No, let me concentrate on the reality. So, go on discrimination, discriminating. That is vichara, viveka, vichara. So that's what is Vedanta, the essence of Vedanta, how to practice Vedanta. And Sri Ramakrishna is making it so clear, so simple. So, of what avail, Sri Ramakrishna is telling, will it be if one hears and understands this, the reality, but does not try to give up what is unreal? When you know what is real, when you know what is unreal, then still if you go and get attached to the unreal, what is the avail? When you know this is the reality, stick on to the reality, give up the unreal. So that is the thing of discrimination. After discrimination, after coming to know this is unreal, when you know that fire burns, after that too, you go and keep your hand in the fire. I'm the fullest of the person. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is telling, of what avail will it be if one hears and understands this reality and the unreality, but does not try to give up what is unreal. It is like the knowledge of the worldly people. It is like the knowledge of the worldly people. They have gained so much of knowledge, but they never apply that in their life. It's only a waste. They just use it for some gaining some worldly things. That's all. The knowledge is used. That knowledge is so high, so much of intelligence they have gained, but that is not used for gaining the reality, the essence. So they'll be wasting their life. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna is telling, of what avail, what is it use? Will it be of what avail will it be if one hears and understands this, but does not try to give up what is unreal? It is like the knowledge of the worldly people. How will be the knowledge of the worldly people? One cannot attain reality by means of that kind of knowledge. Conviction is necessary. Renunciation is imperative. It is then alone that one can succeed. Otherwise, you may repeat, there is no thorn, there is no pricking, but the moment the thorn enters into your leg or any part of your body, you feel the pain, you feel the prick, and cry out in pain. You merely utter, there is no universe, it is unreal, it is Brahman alone, the Lord alone exists. But as soon, but and so on. But as soon as the object of the world, but as soon as the objects of the world, like sights, sights means the Indriya has the object of the world in this world as whatever it sees, good things and so many other things it sees, that is sights. Then taste, we eat so many things, that is the object, sense object of our this Indriya, the sense, mouth or tongue. so on. So all those five things, objects like sights, taste, etc., they come before you and attract you, they tempt you. You take them to be real, you fall to that temptation, you get attached to that or averse to that, you develop dislike and dislike to that. So, but as soon as the objects of the world, sights, taste, etc., come before you, you take them to be real and you get entangled. So now Ramakrishna is giving how a wonderful example. There came a person, a sadhaka, was practicing Vedanta. So there came a man to Panchavati. He used to speak incessantly. He used to speak incessantly on Vedanta to the people. He used to lecture incessantly of all these higher things to people. Then one day, Sri Ramakrishna is telling, I heard that he had contracted an illicit connection with a woman. So he was speaking of Vedanta. He was telling so many higher things to all the other people, teaching it. But I came to know that Ramakrishna is telling he has contracted an illicit connection with a woman. So I went in that direction, that is Panchavati, one day. When I saw him sitting there, that person was speaking of Vedanta, but in practice, he was doing all these nonsenses. So in his own life, he had not practiced that. He's only using the Vedanta to teach and earn some money or a living, but he's not practicing it. So while I was going in the direction of the Panchavati, I met him. He was sitting there. I said to him, you talk so much about Vedanta. What is this talk about you then? You talk so much about the Vedanta that the world is unreal and God alone is true. You talk so much, you give lectures, but when it comes to practice, you think this, the body of the woman or the illicit relationship is true, and you have got into it. You have given your mind to this attachment to the body. What is the talk of Vedanta and what is your practice? You are not. There is no connection between your real life and the life you are preaching to the people. Ramakrishna asked him, why is this dichotomy? Why is this hypocrisy? You are practicing something which you are not preaching. You talk about Vedanta, I said to that person, and what is this talk about you then? People are telling that you are into a illicit relationship with that woman. To that, that person replied, what does it matter? I can make it clear to you intellectually, I can prove that I'm not wrong. I can make it clear to you that there is no harm in that. What is the fact that the world is unreal in the past, in the present, and the future? So, will my action alone be real? If the world all the time, in the past, in the present, in the future, is unreal, and my action in the present, having this illicit relationship, is that only real? That is also unreal, isn't it? So, how can my action of this bad action, whatever I do, is real? That is also unreal. So, devil quoting the scriptures. There's a saying in Christianity. So, Satan is using the words of Jesus Christ from the Bible and using it to tempt people and put them into wrong direction. So, that is called as devil quoting the scriptures. Satan, the evil people, take up the quotations from Bible and other great scriptures and use it to prove their wrong things. They're doing so many wrong, ill deeds, and they will prove it by these great teachings, wrongly applying that, quoting it out of context. So this is called devil quoting the scriptures. So using the higher teaching in the wrong direction, it is telling I can prove it that whatever I have done is untrue. So if all the whole universe is untrue, how can my action be true? That is also untrue. Then the karma, the karma chakra, dharma chakra will come and give you, because of your actions, the karma phala will come to you in the form of difficulties, diseases, or in the form of different varieties of blows in your life, then you should also accept that as unreal. Then you cannot complain telling that, oh, what the illicit relationship is only unreal and these blows which are coming is real. Then you should take all the blows and difficulties and all the other things as unreal too. Then you should not be pained by that. So nicely Sri Ramakrishna is putting it, giving us the essence so nicely. Is going so deep. So otherwise, you may repeat, there is no thorn, no pricking. But the moment you touch the thorn, you feel the prick and cry out again in pain. You merely utter, there is no universe, it is unreal, it is God alone that exists, and so on. But as soon as the objects of the world, the temptations in the form of different things come before you, you fall prey to that, you get attached to that, or you get not only attachment, the dvesha, the hatred or aversion is also wrong. Both of these are very troublesome. Not only attachment and liking, but also disliking and aversion, that is also as bad as attachment. So aversion is also bad. So you have to give up that. That's why Krishna is telling in Bhagavad Gita, Raga Dvesha Viyuktaistu. You have to give up this raga and dvesha, attachment and aversion too. It is the same thing. So now Ramakrishna is giving the example of this person, a sadhana, the Vedanta sadhaka. There came a man to Panchavati. He used to speak incessantly on Vedanta to the people. Then one day I heard that he had contacted an illicit connection with a woman. I went in that direction, that is Panchavati. When I saw him sitting there, I said to him, you talk so much of Vedanta. What is this talk about your illicit relationship then? To which he replied, what does it matter? I can make it clear to you that there is no harm in that. What is the fact that the world, when it is unreal in the past, present, and future, will my action alone be real? That is also unreal. Then Sri Ramakrishna got annoyed at the interpretation of his Vedanta, the way wrongly is applying Vedanta or bringing down the higher ideal to his level, and is also proving his very bad deed through Vedanta. So Ramakrishna got annoyed the way he is wrongly using Vedanta. So he scolded him, he chided him. Sri Ramakrishna is telling, I was annoyed when I heard this and said, fee on your knowledge. What kind of Vedanta knowledge you have? Fee on that. Spit on that. Use some more indecent word, which I cannot use it here because it's a public lecture. In original Bengali, if you read in the Bengali, this thing that is given. So you can go and find it out for yourself. Used much more indecent words, scolded him. Fee, spit on your Vedanta knowledge. Wrong application of your knowledge. Such a high thing, you're dragging it down to your level and using it in the wrong way. And what will the people misunderstand? They will wrongly understand this Vedanta and they will be practicing it in a very bad way. The people are at the helms of the affair, who are at the higher places, in the reverential place, should not do such wrong practices because it will destroy the faith of the people. So, what kind of a man are you? Ramakrishna chided him. Fee on your Vedanta, fee on your knowledge of Vedanta. I spit on it. What kind of wrong application is this? Ramakrishna was annoyed when he heard this and said, fee on your knowledge of Vedanta. What is the kind of knowledge that is the kind of knowledge which the worldly people have of Vedanta? That is the kind of knowledge which the worldly people have of Vedanta. That knowledge is no knowledge at all. That knowledge is no knowledge at all. That is wrong application. The higher truths are dragged down to our level for our convenience, for our adjustments. We compromise those teachings and apply it wrongly, and also give that teaching to others and bring bad name to that higher scriptures. So now that is called in India. In India, they use the word Punjabi Vedanta. Just like some sweets and other things have that particular from that taste. So they were practicing one brand of Vedanta. They would study too much of Vedanta but apply it wrongly. So that is called as Punjabi Vedanta. It is not any deriding or anything. Punjabis are the people from Punjab. That's just the usage. What is that Punjabi Vedanta? Wrong application of Vedanta. Yeah, one person saw that his friend is having a lot of money in his pocket. He's having a bunch of currency, maybe some $1,000 or something rands in his pocket. So this person who knew little Vedantic knowledge, then he wanted to apply knowledge and make it more what do you call practical in the worldly sense and have that money. So he started teaching, giving the teaching of Vedanta to that person. See, my pocket is empty. I don't have that money. Your pocket is full with that $1,000 or 10,000 rands or whatever is in your pocket. So now we will apply the Vedanta. According to Vedanta, it's the same Atman which is in me is also in you. So you and I are of the same entity. We are both same. So what is the use of that bundle of note which is in your pocket? That can be also in my pocket. So instead of that, because we are of the Atman nature of Atman, God exists in you, the same God exists in you, the same God exists in me. So if that bundle of note currency is in your pocket is as good as it is in my pocket. So let it come to my pocket, I will enjoy that. So that is called Punjabi Vedanta. So wrong application. Instead, the real application is I have this money, you are in dire consequence, you are in trouble. So I don't want this. I am enjoying the Lord. So I let this pocket, the money which is in my pocket, be in your pocket. That is a correct application. The wrong application is taking away the money of the other person and telling that is Vedanta. That's called Punjabi Vedanta. So it's wrong application and dragging down, compromising the higher teachings. So that is what Sri Ramakrishna is alerting us. We use that wrongly, so we should not get into trouble. So in the beginning itself, Ramakrishna is telling about the way by which men may mislead or we also may wrongly apply because Anukula, it's called Anukula Vedanta. So for our convenience, we drag down that devil quoting the scriptures. So that is the kind of knowledge which the worldly people have of Vedanta. That knowledge is no knowledge at all. Even if you have that knowledge, if you are wrongly applying it, that knowledge is no knowledge at all. So there the conversation ended. The master told him all this while he was walking with him under the Panchavati. So all this thing about Vedanta was told to Hari, that is the would be Swami Turiyanandaji Maharaj, who would become one of the greatest Vedantists in future. So Ramakrishna gave this teaching essence of Vedanta to him in this fashion, how to apply it, how to do the reflection, how to do the inquiry, how to discriminate between the right and the wrong, real and the unreal, Atman and the Anatman. So after that, the conversation ended. Sri Ramakrishna told him all this while he was walking with him under the Panchavati. Our friend, that is Hari Prasanna or Turiyananda, had been laboring under the apprehension that the Vedanta could not be understood and liberation would be a far cry till difficult books like the Upanishads, Panchadashi, and the like were studied and a clear understanding of the philosophical systems like Sankhya, Nyaya, etc. were attained. From the master's talk that day, from the conversation, from the teachings given by Sri Ramakrishna that day, that great Vedantin, Turiyananda, or that Hari came to understand that the only purpose of Vedantic discussion was to have the conviction in one's heart. One might read shelves of books. One might read shelves of books on philosophy and logic, but if one did not have the firm conviction that God alone is real and the world is unreal, it would make no difference whether one studied them or not. The ordinary, illiterate, unread person may be a better person if he had practiced even without his literacy. He has not read anything, he doesn't have degree or master degree, he has not studied Vedanta or any other scriptures or any other religious text. but he has taken up, heard it from somebody and applied one teaching into his life and made perfect in it, then he is better person than the person who has gotten so many shelves of knowledge, tons of theories. What is the use? It is just like the donkey carrying bundles of sandalwood or books on its back. The donkey carries, it's a beast of burden. So it carries thousands of books on its back. What is the use to that donkey? The ladle or the spoon serves the sweet, beautiful, wonderful payasam to thousands of people. What is the use to that ladle? What will that ladle or the spoon get? Can it taste the payasam? Can it eat that sweet, wonderful sweet? It cannot. So likewise, you might have read so much tons of theories of Vedanta, other books and other things. You might have got degrees, master degrees, PhDs and postdoctorates. Just like one of that great person has studied 145 degrees and 14 master degrees, then PhDs, MBAs. His target is more than 200 degrees, and is teaching in six colleges. Parthivan, a lecturer in the Vivekananda College in Chennai, but he's still continuing with this attachment to have degrees and degrees and degrees, never ending, ever proceeding, never ending, ever proceeding. So he's going on getting degrees, but never applying. What is the use? He doesn't meet his wife. The wife tells very rarely does he come to the family and talk to the children. He's always busy in six different colleges. He gives 10 or 15% of his salary to the house. I manage all that things. I have given him up to the degrees, to the study. That's all. He's studying and studying and studying. So here, Sri Ramakrishna is telling you may be having the, you might have read shelves of books on philosophy and logic. But if one did not have the firm conviction that God alone is real and world is unreal, and if you do not practice it, it would make no difference whether one studied them or not. It will be just like the donkey carrying the books on its back. It is of no use to it. Then the ladle serving, or the ladle or the spoon serving so much of payasam or sweet porridge to everybody, thousands of people, but it cannot taste it. It doesn't nourish it in any way. So Brahman alone is real. God alone is true. All else is unreal. The world is unreal. So if you have this knowledge and apply that, then all your study will come to use. So otherwise, what is the use? It's a waste. You know, a great teaching of Swami Vivekananda, an ounce of practice is better than tons of theories. An ounce of practice, it's a measurement. Earlier days, they used to make this measurement a small, it's in volumes. Ounce, the smallest, the thing is called ounce. They used to give the syrups, the medicines, the doctors used to give so many different colorful syrups were there. It would be given as medicine. So they used to measure it as 1 ounce, 2 ounce to be given to the patients or anybody for that sake. It's a measurement, small measurement, 1 ounce, the smallest. So in volume, so it is called ounce. So an ounce of practice is better than tons and tons of theories. You may be knowing tons and tons of theories, shelves of books, and you might have read shelves of books. You might have got gigabytes and terabytes of information in your head or in your hard disk. But if you don't apply that in your life, you may be having the biggest store of in your hard disk. You may be having so many terabytes, gigabytes of knowledge or information. If you don't look at it, if you don't see it, maybe having the whole area of your cupboard may be filled with the wonderful best books with all blazing headings there. That's only for show. People will come to your house, see that showcase full of books, great names, great authors. They'll be surprised. Oh, what a wonderful collection of books. Do you read all those things? You'll be feeling so happy. Oh, I've been praised, but it doesn't, not even turned one page of it, only for show. Open it, and so many pages are even not even open. Sometimes in the books, the new printing, you'll be see that 2 or 3 pages will be stuck up. It will not be cut properly. So even that has been not removed. It's not even opened that books once, but it will be there for the showcase for the people to come and what do you call think that you are a great personality having so much of knowledge, only for show off. So an ounce of practice is better than tons of theories. You have to assimilate the knowledge and put it into practice. Even one idea, two idea is better than knowing so many things and do not putting into practice. So now it would make no difference whether one studied them or not if you don't apply that into your life. What is the use of having so many things in your head? It's only a weight, heavy weight to your head, that's all. Your head will be full of so much of what do you call information, jumbled up, mixed up, confused, and never get you will never get anything out of it. So he bade goodbye to Sri Ramakrishna Hari and returned to Calcutta, deciding that he should thenceforth apply his mind more to the practice of spirituality than to simply study the books. Determined to know God direct through the spiritual practices, he now applied himself wholeheartedly to them. So that was the same Turiyananda in his end of his life when he developed carbuncle on his back due to diabetes and other things. He developed some carbuncle on his back. So the doctors told that it has to be cut off, removed from his body. Surgery has to be done. He agreed. So the doctor came. So in those days, it was only the chloroform, the outdated this thing. Now I think I don't know whether they use it or not as anesthesia. There are so many thousands of anesthesia, local anesthesia, general anesthesia, so many varieties of anesthesia have come. So in those days, it was only one anesthesia. That was the chloroform. So the doctor wanted to administer that chloroform and put him into unconscious state and then operate, remove that carbuncle from the back, which was quite big on the back. When it is cut, so much of blood loss will be there and pain, intense pain will be there. You know, when that micro knife, small, very soft knife, you cut that, the doctor will cut. Then the bleeding has to be removed and bandage has to be put. So many other things. Be very painful for many days. So they administer this chloroform. After that, there'll be painkiller, so many other things. But Turiyanandaji, he had practiced Vedanta with the guidance of Sri Ramakrishna to that perfection that he had come to know. He had realized the Atman or Parabrahman, the Lord, in its reality, the Toto. So how much he knew that he is not the body. He is the Atman. He had identified himself, Atmaikya, Buddhi. He had got the conviction, knowledge that he is the Lord who is within, the Atman, the Parabrahman. I'm not the body, I'm not the ego. So all that he had separated due to the teaching of Sri Ramakrishna, real Vedanta had gained the knowledge of Vedanta. So he told the doctor, you can operate, remove that carbuncle without this chloroform. No need of anesthesia. I will remove my mind from that portion of the body. You do whatever you want. You cut that carbuncle. I will not feel the pain. The doctor came. Swami sat in meditation, Turiyananda. He told, now I have removed my mind from that part of the body where the carbuncle is. You can now cut it. So the doctor started cutting. Not even a twitch on his face. No feeling of pain. The whole carbuncle on the back is cut and bleeding. The other Brahmachari Maharaj would become the vice president, who was a uh, disciple of the direct disciple, Swami Brahmananda's disciple, who wrote the famous, who is Swami Yatishwarananda. The famous meditation and spiritual life has been written by him. So he was there as a brahmachari, young brahmachari novice, was helping in the surgery. He was looking after the Swami at that time. After the operation, the services to tend to him, look after him, sevak. But seeing the bleeding, seeing the cut, he swooned, he became unconscious, fell down. You know, some people, when they see blood and other things, they get unconscious. That brahmachari, he fell down unconscious seeing that blood. But this Swami, on whom the surgery is being performed, his carbuncle is being cut, sitting there with a smile, no pain. So he had attained that reality of Vedanta, that God alone is true, all else is illusory. This body is untrue. I'm not the body. It is just a instrument which I have. Vasam sijirna nita vihaya, just like the old cloth. It is just like a external cloth, worn out cloth is given up. Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita. Like that, this body is a cloth which I'm wearing, external sheath. That's all. So my reality is the Atmaswarupa. I am of that nature, the consciousness. So he had realized that. So that was the training of Sri Ramakrishna to that Hari. And Turiyananda, as Turiyananda, he had got that knowledge. Then after that, the doctor came again next time. So he was very confident. He had the conviction there is no pain. He went and touched the wound. And immediately the Swami breathed in pain, shouted in pain. After that, the doctor was taken aback. He told, "Oh, that day I did the operation without any anesthesia and there was no pain on your face. Now you are shouting in pain. Sorry, sorry. I didn't know it." No, Turiyanandaji told, "No, my mind was in that portion of the body. You didn't alert me before. If you had told me earlier, I would have removed my mind from that body. Then I would have not felt the pain. Now you do all the cleaning and you can do all that, what you call removing the sutures or applying the medicine, everything you do, I will remove my mind from that body. So at will, no attachment, no aversion, no attachment, no hatred. Ragadvesha viyuktaistu, no attachment. So I will remove at will the mind from that portion of the body. Now you apply medicine, do whatever. Then he again removed and sat there. And then he started removing the bandage, touching the wound and removing, no pain. So that happened in the life of this same Swami. I'll be mentioning that again and again, this example. Even Ramana Maharshi, one of the greatest Vedantin, I'll be speaking again and again. When he had cancer of the bone or something on the left hand, when the doctors were operating, he too didn't have the anesthesia. He had given that part of the body, the left hand, to get the operated as if it is not a part of him at all. Doctors were performing, he was talking, and he was happy in a different state. Ramana Maharshi. So that is the true application of Vedanta. So now that Turiyananda, after getting the knowledge from Sri Ramakrishna, essence of Vedanta, determined to know God direct through the scripture, spiritual practices, he now intensely applied himself wholeheartedly to the teachings given by Sri Ramakrishna. So the whole of Vedanta, you see, you might take a life to study Vedanta. And Ramakrishna has given it in just half an hour. The essence is given in such a simple way. Just practices and you get everything. So faith is the answer. The Lord Himself, the Avatar Purusha, has given you this wonderful teaching. Apply it. Think of it. God alone is real. All else is unreal. Apply that in your life. Have that conviction, reality of God and unreality of all the happenings in this world. Then you have this joy. That is the real practice of Vedanta. So the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna is one of the greatest disciples of Mahapurush Maharaj. He was a householder poet in Karnataka. He's got this Gnanapita Prashasti and so many other uh, things in literature and poetry and so many other things. He's nationally famous in India. That is Kuvampu, Kuppalli Venkatappa Puttappa. He writes, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, teachings of Sri Ramakrishna are like Karatala Devasthan, the temple in your own hands. So the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna are so simple that if one has read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna teaching, it is as good as a great Pandit who has taken the whole lifetime to study Vedanta, to study the scriptures, Puranas, all the great religious texts. So an ordinary illiterate person who has read or heard the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna will become more greater than the greatest of the Pandits. Karatala Devasthan, the temple will come to your own hands. If you have the book, the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna Gospel in your hand, it is as good as you having the whole temple in your hand. That is the usage he gives, that poet uses that so nicely, metaphor. So the teachings are so great. You might have not studied Vedanta, you might have not studied Sanskrit. Study only the teaching and life of Sri Ramakrishna. The whole of Vedanta is at your fingertips. That is the speciality of the greatest avatara. So whenever Sri Ramakrishna came to the house of anyone in Calcutta, the news of his coming spread in a short time to the devotees of the inner circle. No one in particular took the responsibility of spreading it among all, but the hearts of the devotees were extremely eager to see him. So, if business preoccupation prevented them from visiting him at Dakshineshwar, they would very often visit one another's house in the satsang when Sri Ramakrishna used to come to different devotees' house in Calcutta. There would be satsangs, there would be singing, there would be talk by Ramakrishna, there would be thought on the Lord, the prasad, the puja, everything. So then many people who couldn't go to Dakshineshwar because it was quite far off, when Sri Ramakrishna used to visit so many houses, the satsangs of different people, then many devotees would rush there. They used to come to that place because easily Sri Ramakrishna is available there. It would be sometimes difficult to go to Dakshineshwar, which was quite far off. They have to catch. Then there is no bus and tram and train, the metro or something like that. It was just you have to either walk or you have to go by the horse carriage. In those days, those were the only vehicles, horse carriages, or the tonga or the rickshaw pulled by human beings, or a horse carriage or the bullock cart. These were the only mode of transport. So when Sri Ramakrishna would come to different houses nearby in Calcutta, all of them would come there. So they would very often visit one another's house when Sri Ramakrishna would visit there for the satsang and derive great joy in conversing about him. If anyone amongst them somehow came to know of the master's arrival in anybody's house, the news would travel automatically from mouth to mouth and spread amongst them all. It's very difficult to explain to the reader how, through Sri Ramakrishna's grace, the devotees were bound by an indescribable bond of love. They were also bound by indescribable bond of love amongst each other. But the attraction of Sri Ramakrishna was so much, they would be eagerly waiting to go and meet him, rush to him wherever any chances arises. They used to rush. That was the attraction, the deep attraction of Sri Ramakrishna. So it was not only binding all of those devotees with an indescribable bond of love, because they were so much attracted to him. It's very difficult to explain to the reader how, through the Master's grace, the devotees were bound by an indescribable bond of love. It was in the quarters of Bagh Bazar, Shimulia, and Ahiritola that many of the Master's devotees lived in that area in Calcutta. For this reason, Sri Ramakrishna would come on most occasions to one or other of those three places. Of the three places, again, it was to Bagh Bazar that he would come most often. A short time after the event mentioned above, Sri Ramakrishna came one day to the house of Balram Basu at Bagh Bazar. So Balram Basu was a great devotee of Sri Ramakrishna, was popular. Sri Ramakrishna has kept a diary, recorded how many times Sri Ramakrishna visited his house. He had put it into the diary, the date and everything, time. What did he do there? Everything. Diary was there. So Sri Ramakrishna has gone to the house of Balram Basu in Bagh Bazar more than 100 times. So that house has been given to Sri Ramakrishna Ashrama, that old house has been renovated, and now it is one of the house there in Bagh Bazar. Balram Mandir, it is called Balram Mandir. So there is a very big ashram of Sri Ramakrishna. The whole big house is in the hands of Sri Ramakrishna Ashrama. It's called as Balram Mandir. More than 100 times. Sri Ramakrishna has visited, sang, went to Samadhi, talk of God. Wonderful things, wonderful vibration there. If you can feel that if you go there. So during the Rath Yatra, there was a small chariot. So that would be pulled in the veranda. Even now during the Rath Yatra, there will be thousands of people get there to pull that Ratha. And so many other events have taken place. So that is Balram Basu's house. So now our author of this book, Shardanandaji Maharaj, is explaining whenever Sri Ramakrishna came into house of anyone in Calcutta, the news of his coming spread in a short time to the devotees of the inner circle. Now, a short time after the event mentioned above, the master came one day to the house of Balram Basu at Bagbasa. Many of the devotees of that quarters came to know of this and assembled there. Our friend lived nearby. Sri Ramakrishna made inquiries about him. That is Turyananda, who would become Turyananda. Earlier he was called Hari Prasanna Hari. So our friend Hari lived nearby. Ramakrishna made inquiries about him. A young acquaintance of him of his fetched him at once. So a young acquaintance ran to the house of Hari, brought him to Bagbazar. Ramakrishna has come there. He wants to meet you. Come. So Hari came to Sri Ramakrishna there in Bagbazar. As soon as the friend Hari Prasanna would be Turyananda entered the spacious parlor on the first floor of the house of Balram Basu. You go to Balram Basu, you can imagine, you can see all those things. I can imagine because I've gone there so many times. As soon as Hari entered that parlor, as soon as the friend entered the spacious parlor on the first floor, so to go climb the staircase, old type of staircase are there even now. That is not even like the modern days, the staircase are of different type. It is more, the gradient is a little more. There's wooden support on the sides. You have to catch hold of that and climb up. So as soon as you go up, entered the spacious parlor on the first floor of the house of Balram Basu, Hari saw that Sri Ramakrishna was surrounded by the devotees and they were saluting him. They were doing prostrations, pranams. He sat down near him on one side. The master made loving inquiries. Immediately when he saw this young boy, he made loving inquiries about his health and welfare and went on with the subject of his conversation. So when he saw him, all the other people were doing prostrations. He inquired about him, asked about his well-being. After that, he continued the conversation which he was earlier talking about God. So from a word or two, from a word of or two. So after that, the conversation from a word or two, the friend that is Hari would be Swami Turyananda understood the drift of the discourse. So the talk was gradually shifting, the drift of the discourse now. Sri Ramakrishna, as soon as he came, because Hari has come, the Vedantin, so we could feel that drift of the discourse. The master was emphasizing that nothing whatever, the master was emphasizing that nothing whatever, be it knowledge, that is Gnana Yoga, devotion, Bhakti Yoga, or direct spiritual experience, that is the Raja Yoga, could be achieved without God's grace. You couldn't attain Gnana Yogyata or the knowledge or the Bhakti Yoga devotion or the spiritual experiences of the Raja Yoga, whatever you might perform, until you have the grace of God, until you have the God's grace, nothing could be achieved without God's grace. So the shift of the discourse could be felt, and now Sri Ramakrishna, though he was talking in a general to everybody, that teaching was particularly to Hari. that you may be performing the best of the Gnana Yoga, the intensest practices might be done. So first it is Shravana, then Manana, Nididhyasana. You are doing the spiritual practices intensely. You have the conviction that God alone is real, all else is unreal. You're practicing, going deeper and deeper, but nothing will happen. You cannot achieve anything. Means realize God until you have the grace of God. Grace, 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 grace of God is very, very important. So, Ramakrishna is telling, be it knowledge, Gnana Yoga, devotion, Bhakti Yoga, or direct spiritual experience, Raj Yoga, could be achieved without God's grace. God's grace. As a friend was listening, that is Hari Turiyananda, as a friend was listening, it struck him that the master had introduced the topic in order to remove a misconception of his mind, and that the whole discourse was meant for him only. Hari could feel it. You may be putting in the best of the self effort, intense self effort. You may be doing all the spiritual practices. You might have got all the conviction. You might be doing kathora tapasya, intense spiritual practice, intense effort. But until you have the grace of God, nothing will you gain. Nothing could be achieved without God's grace. As Turiyananda or Hari, our friend, was listening, it struck him that Sri Ramakrishna had introduced this topic in order to remove a misconception of his mind, and that the whole discourse was meant for him only. He heard Sri Ramakrishna say, well, is it very easy matter? Well, is it very easy matter to realize that lust and gold, kama kanchana, are really unreal, and to have the firm conviction that the universe is eternally non-existent? Is it very easy matter to get this conviction? Is it possible without his compassion? Is it possible only if his grace? It is possible only if his grace produces the conviction in us. Without God's grace, you cannot get that conviction. Can a man have that conviction by his own effort? You will put in the self effort. You have to put the self effort to know that you will not achieve anything by self effort. It is by self surrender, by God's grace. Only you can get that. To know that, you have to put in the self effort. Why the self effort? To know that by self effort you are not going to. Otherwise, you will not know that. You will not get that conviction. What is real God's grace? What is his compassion? What is self surrender? We may talk thousands and thousands on self surrender. I've surrendered everything. I don't have my ego. I have given everything of mine to God. You may tell it, repeat it hundreds of times. But true self surrender is something very, very, very high. So you can get an inkling, a jhalak, that spark, inkling of that idea. What is compassion? What is grace of God? You cannot attain by self effort, but you have to put in the self effort. You cannot escape from self effort. To know that by ego you cannot, because you can achieve anything. Only by God's grace you can achieve anything. So now Ramakrishna is telling Hari, because he was putting intense self effort. From his childhood, he's practicing brahmacharya continence. From his childhood, he's reading Vedanta. He has become expert in all the field of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. He has studied grammar. He has studied all the Upanishads. He has studied all those Puranas. He has put himself into the practice. Kathora tapasya. He is doing everything intensely. So now, self effort is not a ordinary thing. He is putting in the self effort. That's why the Guru, the Lord, out of his compassion, is showing the real path. So they are directly proportional. How do you get the grace of the Lord? By putting in the self. The Lord will see how much effort you are putting, so he gets the compassion. So he will help it. So now you can see it. As soon as he came there, Sri Ramakrishna is telling, is it possible, my dear boy? Well, Hari, he heard the master say, well, is it very easy matter to realize that lust and gold, the main attraction of this world, lust and gold, lust is the intense desire, kama, cupid. Gold is lobha, greed, want more, enjoy all this more of this world, lust and greed. Kama Kanchana, Sri Ramakrishna used to call with those two words, Kama Kanchana. Is it a very easy matter to realize that lust and gold are really unreal? See the term here, really unreal. And to have the firm conviction, deep conviction, firm conviction that the universe is eternally non existent, it doesn't exist, it is a dream, it is just a projection, it is just a manifestation, it doesn't exist eternally, it is not there, it is appearing apparently as if it is existing. All that we are sitting here, all that you are seeing outside, it's raining here now, dark, even at 7:40 we don't see the sunlight, it is as if in the deep evening or early very morning. All this external manifestation of the world doesn't exist at all. It's all just apparent. Can we feel it? No. So is it possible without his compassion to have the firm conviction that the universe is eternally non-existent? Is it possible without his compassion? It is possible. It is possible only if his grace produces the conviction in us. So grace and self-effort are complementary. They're the same thing. Even if you have to put in the self-effort, you need the grace of the Lord. Without the grace of the Lord, you cannot put in the self-effort. Swami Yatishwarananda Maharaj, when he was the vice president and he was also the president of Bangalore, so he was sitting there. There would be everyday night class. After the night supper, there would be class. And all the brahmacharis, now presently revered Harshanandaji Maharaj, who is head of Bangalore Center, he is 91 or even more than that. He's senior in sannyasa to revered Gautamanandaji Maharaj also. So all of them, even more senior Swamis who are brahmacharis than Swami Prabhuddhanandaji Maharaj, who was the head of San Francisco Center, he was no more. Then another revered Swami Shastranandaji Maharaj. Then so many other brahmacharis were sitting there. They were all novices, brahmacharis in 40s, 1940s, 1950s. So all the brahmacharis of that, no, most of them are not there. Only few of them, one or two are there. That's all of that period. All have passed away. So they were sitting and conversing, and Yatishwaranandaji Maharaj was the vice president, also the president of Bangalore Mutt at that time. So the conversation was of the self-effort and grace of God. So there was argumentation. He allowed the brahmacharis, all of them sitting there, the Swamis, to argue about what is right, what is true, what we have to do, is it great, what is great. So they were all arguing that self-effort is more important. Some were arguing, no, grace of God is more important. So the argument went on for a long time. Then finally, most of the people who were arguing on the side of self-effort won. The self-effort became the argument of when there are two these things arguing. So now self-effort is great than God's grace. That was the final conclusion there of all those brahmacharis and the novices sitting there. Then finally, Yatishwaranandaji was watching and enjoying all that conversation as a witness. Finally, he came in and told, finished? All your argumentation is finished. Shall I now tell? Yeah, please tell Swamiji. He was a realized soul. Gnani, Brahmagnani, Yatishwaranandaji Maharaj. Then he told, even for you to put in the self-effort, you need God's grace. Even for you to put in the self effort, you need God's grace. Without God's grace, you cannot even put in the self effort. That was the final reply. That was enough. What a change. So now see, Ramakrishna is giving that in another way. Well, Hari, is it very easy matter to realize that lust and gold are really unreal and to have the firm conviction that the universe is eternally non existent? Is it possible without His compassion? Is it possible only? It is possible. So that can be possible. You can get that conviction, the true knowledge, the realization. It is possible only if His grace produces the conviction in us. You can get that conviction only if His grace produces that conviction in us. Can a man have that conviction by his own effort? Ah, how small is his power, and how small is the effort he can put forth with that power. Thus, speaking of the grace of God, thus speaking of the grace of God, the Master, Sri Ramakrishna, went into deep samadhi. Thus speaking, only he can understand what is the role of the grace and what is the greatness of the grace. Thus speaking of the grace of God, Sri Ramakrishna went into ecstasy. After a while, he was in divine semi consciousness. And he said, man cannot have a clear idea of even one thing. Man cannot have a clear idea of even one thing, and he wants another. Then Sri Ramakrishna began in that state to sing the song, started to sing the song. Why are you proud, O Kusha, O Lava? Could you have captured me if I had not allowed myself to be captured? The song is the situation in Ramayana when Lava Kusha, the children of Rama, were staying there in the Rishi ashram of Vishwamitra. Mother Sita was also there. Rama did not know that they were the children. Lakshmana also did not know. So now, when the Rajasuya Yaga was, or Ashwamedha Yaga was being performed, they had set forth the horse. So, when it enters any kingdom, if they can fight and tie that horse there, that was well and good. Otherwise, you have to give the some money and other things to that king and have the subordination. Then that horse will go forward to the next kingdoms. That way, they used to have the superiority or the this thing supremacy over the whole country and become emperors. So that Ashwamedha Yaga was performed. The horse was set free. It was going. So now these Lavakusha were very good archers who were having a lot of strength in archery. So they captured this horse. They didn't know who Ramachandra was, that their father. And so who were accompanying them now? Lakshmana and other people. The horse was accompanied. They could defeat all the great warriors. They were so strong, though young children, they were young children, Lava and Kusha, the children of Ramachandra, the son of Mother Sita. Now they could defeat so many great warriors of Ramachandra. Now, before Ramachandra himself coming to the scene, Hanuman was sent. Lord Hanuman came there. So, but Lord Hanuman knew that they were the children of Mother Sita and Ramachandra. Though Hanuman was very, very strong, he could have easily defeated them, crushed them. But small children, that was the children of Ramachandra, he came to know is the Lord. So he didn't fight properly. He allowed those Lavakusha, those small children, to capture him. So he himself was bound by the arrow or the astra of those two children. Then, when those two children were feeling proud, oh, we have captured the great Hanuman himself, they were feeling proud. So that is the situation, and that has been put into a song format. And now Sri Ramakrishna, while telling about our puny energy, our puny mind, how much effort can we put about the greatness of the God. So man cannot have a clear idea of even one thing and he wants another. And Ramakrishna is telling how small is the power of the human being, how small is his effort he can put forth. What can he gain with that power? It's only grace, grace which produces everything. So he's talking about the grace. Now the master went into samadhi. When he came back, now the master began to sing. In that state, semi-consciousness has come down from that samadhi. Now he's singing this song. So if he had sung that beautiful tune and other things, it would have been much more beautiful. But now we will have the gist of that song. What is the gist of the song? Why are you proud, O Kusha and Lava? Hanuman is telling. I told you the context. Now, Hanuman has been bound by the arrows of this Lava and Kusha. They are small children. Hanuman was very strong. He could break that and he could even destroy those two boys. But he knew they were the son of Ramachandra. So, out of compassion, he just allowed them to bind. So now they were feeling pride. So the song is as if told by Hanuman to them, Lava and Kusha. And now Sri Ramakrishna is singing that. Why are you proud, O Kusha, O Lava? Could you have captured me if I had not allowed myself to be captured? Meaning, Sri Ramakrishna is telling, O human beings, you think that you have realized God, you have got the conviction of the Lord. Out of your punya, you are now hearing, you are reading the great teachings of this Avatar Purusha. It is out of your punya. You think that you have done so much of great merit. That's why you are getting all these good things out of all the millions of people. Only you, few people, so early in the morning, you can hear these good things. So many people are there, though they are devotees, though they claim that they are so great devotees of the Lord, they cannot get up in the morning, so early in the morning, come out of their cozy atmosphere from the blanket, and they cannot wake up and hear. So, what does that mean? Only if you have the grace of God, He chooses you. It's only out of His grace, so we should be very, very grateful to the Lord that only few are chosen. That's the grace of the Lord. You cannot understand, you cannot give any logic to it. How the grace of Lord works, only the Lord can tell you. Why has He chosen us and not others? Of all the billions and billions of population of people, only He has chosen 40 people or something, or some 80 or 100 people now, allowing them to hear His greatness, the grace. So, oh, human beings, don't think that you are getting all these things due to your self effort or punya. Hanuman is telling, and Ramakrishna is also telling, is only out of God's grace you are getting it. Infinite grace of the Lord that you are getting it. It's only the grace of Lord which will make everything impossible into possible. Why are you proud, O Kusha and Lava? Could you have captured me if I had not allowed myself to be captured? The same thing applied to your life. Could you have understood anything a little about God? Could you have got love for the feet of the God? Could you have got the liking to study the Vedanta, the Bhagavad Gita, and enjoy it? Could you have come out of this anxiety of pandemic by getting all this knowledge without the grace of God? Was it by your effort? No, it's God's grace. That's what Sri Ramakrishna is telling. Why are you proud, O Kusha and Lava? Hanuman is telling, could you have captured me if I had not allowed myself to be captured? So the Lord allowed out of His compassion to know Him, to get that knowledge. So we have got it. So to be grateful to the compassion, we have to become humble. As he was singing, as Sri Ramakrishna was singing, thinking about the grace of God. What is that grace? You can only cry, you can only shed tears, hearing the grace of the Lord. Ramakrishna himself is shedding tears. As he was singing, streams of tears flowed down from Sri Ramakrishna's eyes, and a part of his and a part of the sheet covering the carpet got wet. Can you imagine? Sri Ramakrishna is singing, that too coming out of ecstasy after that samadhi. Now, when he is singing, he is feeling what is the essence of the grace of God. What is grace of God? He can understand that. So, by knowing the grace of God, by understanding what is grace of God, Sri Ramakrishna is feeling that joy and also the helplessness and also the situation where people think it is with their effort. And what is the nature of grace of God? What is the greatness of grace of God? Thinking that Ramakrishna is shedding tears. So much of incessant tears. As he was singing, streams of tears, streams just like river, Ganga, Yamuna, streams of tears flow down from Sri Ramakrishna's eyes. How much? A part of the sheet, a part of the sheet covering the carpet got wet. Can you imagine? As Sri Ramakrishna was singing, coming out of that ecstasy, about the grace of the Lord, compassion of God, streams of tears flow down from Sri Ramakrishna's eyes, and a part of the sheet covering the carpet got wet. Caught up in the pathetic sentiment, pathos, caught up in the pathetic sentiment conveyed by the teaching, the friend Turiyananda, whose heart was so strong now because of the Advaitic teaching, no emotions. It has become hard like a stone. Caught up in the pathetic sentiment conveyed by the teaching, the friend Hari Prasanna, who was into that intense Vedanta, also could not check himself and he shed profuse tears. So that vibration, that wavelength in which Sri Ramakrishna has risen up to his mind, feeling the grace of God, everybody, due to the satsanga, the presence, the satsanga, the company of Sri Ramakrishna, all those people in and around in that area in Balram Babu's house, their mind was also raised to the level of Sri Ramakrishna's that ambience produced by his feeling. And they could feel the grace of God at that time. Even that Vedantic heart, no emotions, no crying. So even Turiyananda was practicing that intense Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, in him too, the heart melted, devotion, that feeling for the grace of God came and he too started shedding tears. I was surprised. He would never shed tears in that manner. Very strong hearted, strong mind. So that pathos caught up in the pathetic sentiment conveyed. So don't misunderstand the word pathetic here. Pathetic in another context is different. Here, the pathos, the feeling that you get that to cry. So caught up in the pathetic sentiment conveyed by the teaching, which Sri Ramakrishna was singing, and the teaching earlier. The friend Turiyananda, who was a great Vedantin, also could not check himself, and he shed profuse tears. It was some time before both of them came to the normal state. The friend says, that is Turiyananda, Hari, at that time, the friend says, that teaching of Sri Ramakrishna, that teaching has forever been imprinted in my mind. That teaching has forever been imprinted on my mind. I have known from that day that nothing can be achieved without grace of God. I will just repeat the words of Turiyananda again and end my conversation for today. The friend says, that is Hari, Turiyananda is telling, after seeing that condition, after the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, after seeing the ecstasy, after Sri Ramakrishna was crying with streams, thinking of the grace of God, Hari is telling that teaching of Sri Ramakrishna has forever been imprinted. That teaching has forever been imprinted on my mind. I have known from that day that nothing can be achieved, that nothing can be achieved without the grace of God. Grace, grace, grace. Compassion, grace of God. Kripa, kripa hi kevalam, kripa hi kevalam, kripa hi kevalam, sharanye, sharanya. Ramakrishna Sharanam, Ramakrishna Sharanam. Kripa hi kevalam, Kripa, Kripa, Kripa. Grace, Kripa. So we'll end our conversation today. If you have any questions, if you have any doubt on today's discussion, you can ask. Any questions, any doubts?
Om Namo Narayana Maharaj.
Om Namo Narayanaya, Chandrup Chandji, please tell.
I had a question in my mind, but you just managed to answer it now concerning the crying aspect of Sri Ramakrishna ji. I just needed to find out during when you are having a satsang and when you are singing with the harmonium and when you are singing the right rag together with a beautiful song, and when tears are pouring from your eyes, when the song is hitting the right note, when your voice is hitting the right note, would you refer that to as a crying for the Lord also?
Yeah, because now at that time, see, I take 1 or 1.5 hour this thing to just uh, uh, describe about tears. So the topic of my lecture is tears and Sri Ramakrishna. So Sri Ramakrishna has mentioned about tears in Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, I think 160 times or something. Cry for God, tears shed for God will make you pure. All that things. So about the tears, Sri Ramakrishna is mentioned in Gospel. I have searched and made a research of it. It is 160 times or so he is mentioned about the tears. So how can you make you use of that ordinary thing, which the children and especially the women, it is not a derogatory term I'm using, they use it as a weapon. The women and the children use that tears as weapon to control their husbands and control the family and everybody by tears. So that strong weapon called tear, if directed in the proper way, it can give you God realization. That is shown. That is shown by one of the greatest avatara, that is Sri Ramakrishna. Nobody has given you that. Just by crying for God, you can get God realization. So people shed tears for so many reasons. It's for sorrow. It's for joy. When you are full of exuberant joy, you shed tears. So when you are sorrowful, then the tears come at the inner edge of the eyes. When you are joyful, you notice the tear appears at the outer end of the this thing. So this while you are singing bhajans, thinking of God, you get so much of joy, feeling that the presence of the God, because it is within your heart. So when you hear the songs, when you hear something good teaching, so an inkling, a spark of that Lord will be seen by you. So at that time, because of the joy, intense joy, you cry, you shed tears. So that is the tears of joy. Tears of joy. So why people cry for helplessness? But that is means surrender. You are helpless, you become helpless. So at that time, only thing is surrender to God. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Chandrupchan. Oh. Any other questions?
Hari Om Swamiji. Colin Chetty.
Om Colin Chetty, please tell.
Swamiji, these teachings are so lofty. I wish we could bring the concept of having of understanding the mind itself, the mind and the brain and the thought itself is very confusing. So, whether the thought is part of the brain or part of the mind or vice versa, whether they're totally irrelevant, I am not so sure. But to still the mind and still the brain, I don't know which it is that we need to do to make it receptive to receive God's name is what I'm confused about.
Yeah, see, we have now been directing the mind to the worldly things, to the worldly enjoyment past so many years and past so many lives. So the mind is now flowing in one particular direction. It is just like you have a puppy in your house. You have trained it to come and jump on your lap and lick your mouth and put its mouth to the food which you are eating. Now somebody had told you, no, it is not bad. it is bad, that it may cause some ill health or it may cause some disease. Now you want to tell the dog not to do that. All these days you have tried it, and it has become, now it has grown up, and now it doesn't give up. It will come, it will jump on you, it will lick your mouth, it will what do you call it, put its mouth to the food. Now you don't want it because the doctor has told that will give some disease. Now suddenly if you tell the dog don't do that, will it follow you? It doesn't. So now you have to punish it a little, you have to scold it a little, then you have to practice it that it will eat only in its own plate, it can't jump upon you. So how much time will you take now to train the dog to go back to, it's another thing. Now you have trained it up to something, now you have to retrain it, take it back in the same path. So our mind is like that. It's just like a small child or a pet. So you have trained it for so many years or so many lives in one particular direction. Now you suddenly want to change it. Oh, will that mind hear you so easily? So it is a gradual practice. That's why it is told practice, practice, practice makes one perfect. So it's a gradual practice by training. You should not be too harsh on it. You should not be too hard on it. Gradual, loving way. You have to through so many different ways, thinking of God, practicing, creating, getting more knowledge of God. So getting devotion to God, you have to practice it, and gradually it will come to your control. So it will take its own time. But you will succeed. You are succeeding. The question itself shows that you are very, very sincere. You want to think of God. That itself shows. So when you put in this effort, as I told you, self effort is directly proportional to grace of God. So the constant is faith. I think in the reactions or in the this in physics and in chemistry, I have this thing called is directly proportional, and there is a constant. So now here the grace of God is directly proportional to your self effort, but the constant is faith. So have faith, persevere, and you see you will make wonderful change. I can understand by your question, you're sincere. In a short time, you can see the change.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's surprising because I also have a pet that does exactly what you just mentioned, Swamiji.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh. Any more questions?
Namaste, Maharaj. This is
Namaste.
Shantanu.
Shantanu, please tell.
Maharaj, you just explained about tears and like prayer to God, sincere prayer to God.
Yeah.
So, how do we know that it is real? Like when we have such a feeling, because sometimes, in a good mood, like we have that feeling, but other times, like the mind is at a lower plane with much lower thoughts. So, how do we know that the mind is not deceiving us?
No, don't worry about its deception or whatever is there. Now, the whole idea of spirituality is bhakti, the devotion is whatever moods you have, whatever weaknesses you have, whatever attachment you have. So in Vedanta, it is to tear it up. You have to give it forcibly. But the bhakti, the speciality is turn it towards God. It may be low, it may be high, it may be whatever, it may be their anger, lust, ego, everything. Turn it, give it a Godward turn. And that will get divinized, that will get sublimated. In Vedanta, it is tearing it up. It's difficult. But in bhakti, in devotion, it is just turning towards God. It's so smooth. The transition is smooth. So don't worry about it. It's your deception. And you even turn the deception towards God. That's all. God will purify it. Whatever feeling you have, any feeling, turn it towards God. That is all the Panchabhavas and other things in devotion is that turn it towards God. See now, Arjuna in the beginning of the war, he got the despondency, melancholy, attachment towards kith and kin and his Gurudeva and grandsire. So the despondency he couldn't withstand. His bow and arrow fell down. He got that what do you call trembling in his legs. He couldn't have strength in his leg. He fell down. He had to sit down on the battlefield, and his hands were shaking because of that intense grief, the emotions. Now he turned that towards Lord Krishna. That became yoga. That's why the first chapter is Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So Vishada itself is melancholy, despondency. But if you turn to worldly things, it will destroy you. If you turn it towards God, it will purify you, it will divinize you. So that is why the very first chapter is Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Turn it towards God, it becomes yoga. Turn it towards the world, the same thing will become roga. Yoga, roga means disease. It will become a disease. That's all.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other doubts? Because today is Sunday, I was giving a little more time. You will be more free.
Pranam Maharaj.
Yes, Madhusudan, please tell.
Yeah, so getting tears itself is again grace of God, right, Maharaj?
Everything. Yeah. It's only your feeling. If you feel for that, you can see the grace of God, then you enjoy it.
Sometimes you cry because of your sentiments, not because of your spiritual.
Towards God. Now you have got a chance. I've given you the example. Two ladies were chatting outside. That mother had kept the milk to boil. So she had forgotten now because of the chit chat. They were talking about all the world. Then finally she could hear the hissing sound of the milk coming up. So she knew now it is already late. She started rushing towards the kitchen, running. She went and saw that milk come up completely above, while it is coming up, the milk, because of the heat. So now it is out of hand. It will definitely, by the time she reaches the vessel of the milk, it will fall down. It is going to be wasted now. She started thinking, what shall I do? What shall I do? What shall I do? Now, she immediately something flashed in her head. Anyhow, it is going to be wasted. It will fall down. Now we cannot use it. Gone is gone. But now if I offer it to God, at least I will get some punya. So she started telling, Krishnarpana, Krishnarpana, Krishnarpana. So he offered it to God. Anyhow, it is going to be wasted. So she offered it to God. At least she got some punya, isn't it? So like that, all these sentiments. That's why in that India there is a saying, Kai tappidaga Krishnarpana. You may be knowing that. So like that, all the work we do to please your children, to please your wife, to please your husband, to please your father and mother, every day you have to do. Instead of doing it with all that sentiments, with drudgery, monotony, anyhow it is wasted. The energy is wasted. So now offer it to God. Just like that lady did. Anyhow it is going to be wasted. You have to do work. You have to work in the office. You have to get scolding from the boss. You have to get scolding from the neighbor. Now, instead of keeping quiet, offer it to God. Turn it towards God. You will gain some punya. Kai tappidaga Krishnarpana. When everything is going to be wasted, offer it to God. You will get some punya. So easy. Bhakti, that's the speciality of bhakti. Anything direct towards God, it will be wonderful. It will divinize it. It will sublimate it. That's all.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Is it enough, or is there any questions? Shall I end with the prayer? So there is a question here. If holy saints think of 5 great thoughts in a cave, they will somehow penetrate this universe and work. Then why there is still Maya in this world? Like holy saints, there are also demons, there are also Rakshasas, there are also bad people who may not be sitting in caves, but they are sitting in the city itself and broadcasting their bad thoughts and bad waves. So people who are opening up, it is just like radio station, FM and AM and other things, there will be so many bandwidth. If you your radio station or TV station is tuned to particular bandwidth, if it is the thought of the holy saints, you will receive it and you will be relieved of your Maya. But if people want to receive the bandwidth of the bad people, the terrorists and the asuras and the rakshasas, they will receive it. Wherever you tune your mind, just like the TV and the radio, that bandwidth of that thought will be received. So if people open up their mind, tune their this thing to the bandwidth of the holy saint, the 5 thoughts, what you are telling from the cave, you will be removed of the Maya. But if people are interested in the worldly things, in the bad things, and if they tune their mind to lower things, for the terrorists, for the Rakshasas, they will still be in Maya. So why should we worry about that? We should tune our mind to the saints and be coming out of Maya. If we can help, try others to do that. That's all. Any more questions? Okay. Now we shall utter the concluding prayer. Om Priyatam Pundarikakshah Sarvayagneswaro Harihi Tasmin Tushte Jagat Tushtam Pridite Prinitam Jagat Harihi Om Tatsat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu